Chapter 555. However, when he spoke, Qi Huang's voice was still filled with disdain and arrogance. Previously, I didn't come out because you were too weak. I don't even have enough energy to maintain my spiritual body. Even now, you're still too weak. This deity can only come out for half an hour at most, before going back to sleep in the Tianmo Qin. Mu Yan coughs lightly and rubs her nose somewhat gloomily. In the Yenwu continent, she's clearly an existence that's practically invincible. But people always said that he was too weak. Liu Se said so, Qi Huang said so, even that guy Di Mingju said so. Was she really that weak? If you want the main body to appear, you have to obediently level up and leave this damned world that doesn't even have spiritual power. Qi Huang raised his chin and spoke in an arrogant and gracious tone. The corners of Mu Yang's mouth twitched, and she thought to herself, no one said they wanted you to appear, did they? But when he thought of the seven-sword spirit skill that Seven Brilliants had unsealed for him, he swallowed his words. Even if she hasn't seen it before, Mu Yan is now aware that the Tianmo Qin with an awakened tool spirit and the Tianmo Qin with a dormant tool spirit are completely different. Just then, Mu Yang noticed that the figure of the youth in front of her was becoming indistinct and blurry. TSK, there's only so little time. Seven Brilliants grumbled in dissatisfaction. Then, as if he had thought of something, he said with a solemn expression, remember, no one must know of this body's existence. Unless you can control divine power, otherwise, even those close to you and those you trust, you must not let them know. Even if your identity as a Shun musician is discovered, you will only face the calamity of death. But if the existence of this deity is discovered, before Seven Brilliants could finish his sentence, his figure rapidly faded until it disappeared. Mu Yang, on the other hand, frowned deeply because of his words. If her identity as a Shun musician is discovered, she will face a fatal disaster. It didn't matter if the consequences were like this. What did Seven Brilliants' existence signify? And before Liu Se died, that wild smile, what did it represent? Why did Di Mingju leave in a hurry? Did he already know something? Why did he suddenly leave? Mu Yang slowly raises her head, looking at the tall tower that she can't see the end of, her expression slightly absent-minded. Di Mingju, you promised me that you would come back. You can't, go back on your word. Shouxian continent, Tianyi Men. Clang, clang, clang. The heavy and distant sound of the bell resounded throughout the entire hinterland of the Tianyi Men. Inside a palace decorated with carvings and paintings, Leng Qingwan slowly opened her eyes and said coldly, what happened? Why did the soul suppression bell ring? As soon as he finished speaking, two maids dressed in immortal clothes quietly floated in. Facing Leng Qingwan, he respectfully saluted and said, reporting to young lord, someone launched the sect annihilation extermination, and their divine soul returned to the Tianyi Men's altar. As he spoke, one of them took out a small silver mirror. Leng Qingwan took the mirror. The surface of the mirror suddenly flashed and Liu Se's figure appeared. Seeing Liu Se's disgustingly ugly face, Leng Qingwan immediately frowned in disgust. Who is this person? Tianyi Men had this kind of disgusting thing. Chapter 556. Hearing Liu Se's name, Leng Qingwan's pupils suddenly contract, her brows slightly wrinkling. Young master, that woman tried to murder you 100 years ago. I don't know how she still has the face to return to the altar. I think, young master, you don't need to care about her. Let her fend for herself, let her soul fly and scatter. Leng Qingwan's eyes flash with a dark light. No, I want to see how she has the face to return to Tianyi Men 100 years later. Tianyi Men's altar. Because of launching the sect-destroying sacrifice, Liu Se's soul is trapped in the altar, rushing left and right, but unable to escape. Master! I want to see Master, she shouts loudly with a rough and hoarse voice. Quickly go and tell Master that I, Liu Se, have returned, and I have a big shocking secret to tell Master. There are many Tianyi Men's disciples standing around, all looking at her with pity and disdain. But not many people moved. Senior Sister Liu, long time no see. A cold voice comes from afar. The Tianyi Men's people who just turned a deaf ear to Liu Se's words immediately make a path, respectfully saluting the newcomer. Greetings, young master. Liu Se's eyes widen, staring blankly at Lung Qingwan, who is slowly walking over. Her turbid eyes suddenly burst with hatred. Lung Qingwan, you slut, why did you come? Master. I want to see Master. Did you hear me? Lung Qingwan sneers. How could Master see you, a deceiving ancestor, a heartless guy? Say, you used the sect-destroying sacrifice to return to Tianyi Men. What do you want to do? Hearing this, Liu Se madly rushes towards Lung Qingwan. Slut. Slut. Back then, it was clearly you who framed me. It was clearly you who deliberately lured me to do those things, making me hated by Master, making me expelled from the Shoshan continent, making me become this neither human nor ghost. Slut, I want to kill you. It was a pity that no one paid any attention to her hysterical look. Everyone looked at her as if they were looking at a pitiful clown on the verge of death. Lung Qingwan's faint voice was transmitted into her ears using the secret sound transmitting technique, and it was filled with endless mockery. Senior Sister Liu, I am now the young master of Tianyi Men, the future master of Tianyi Men. Will anyone believe it? I really didn't expect that the graceful and decisive Senior Sister Liu would become this ugly and disgusting. Liu Se glared at her, wanting nothing more than to tear her to pieces. But in the end, she just sat on the ground dejectedly, despair and resentment welling up in her heart. But then, she seemed to have thought of something and shouted, Lung Qingwan, I don't want to talk nonsense with you. I want to see Master. I have important information to tell Master. As long as I tell this information to Master, Master will definitely use the secret method of Heaven's Physician sect to save me. Heh. You've already been banished to the lower realm. What important information can you possibly have? The maid beside Lung Qingwan sneered, I advise you to stop daydreaming and obediently wait for your divine soul to dissipate. Young Master, don't bother with this trash. Let's go back. Another maid respectfully says to Lung Qingwan, if I look at that face of hers for even a minute longer, this maid is afraid that I'll lose my appetite. Don't dirty young Master's eyes. Chapter 557. Lung Qingwan takes a deep look at Liu Se's miserable appearance. Her aloof face reveals a carefree smile. She turns around to leave. But she didn't expect that just after taking 2 steps, she hears Liu Se's rough voice behind her. What if I say that this news is about the Shun musician's successor? Lung Qingwan's footsteps abruptly stop, and she turns around, fiercely glaring at her. What do you mean by this? Do you know where the Shun musician's successor is? No, don't tell me that the Shun musician's successor has really appeared. This time, the roles are reversed. A complacent smile appears on Liu Se's face. Lung Qingwan, don't waste your energy, I won't tell you the news. I only have 2 to 4 hours to live, you'd better call Shifu here immediately, otherwise, I can't guarantee that the news about the Shun musicians won't disappear together with my death. You should know better than anyone, if the Shun musicians are given room to grow, how terrible they will be, and how big a threat they will pose to our Tianyi Men. Lung Qingwan grits her teeth. Suddenly a white silk appears high in the air, ruthlessly waving it towards the altar. The white silk whistles, as it penetrates the altar's enchantment, it suddenly changes from soft and harmless to hard as iron, ruthlessly whipping Liu Se's soul. Ah! A mournful scream comes from Liu Se's mouth. On the altar, Liu Se's figure can be seen rolling around in distress, incessantly wailing. This kind of pain only stops after several breaths. Lung Qingwan takes back the white silk, sneering, you'd better obediently tell me the Shun musician's whereabouts, otherwise, don't blame me for directly dispersing your soul. Although Liu Se is currently in the form of a soul, the severe pain makes her ugly face twist into a ball. Snot and tears flow on her face, looking terrible and disgusting. Thinking of the pain of her soul being whipped just now, her body can't help but tremble like a sieve. However, as soon as she sees Lung Qingwan's face, the hatred in Liu Se's heart overshadows the fear of pain. Ha 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 ha. Lung Qingwan, if you have the ability then kill me. But if you kill me and lose the news about the Shun musician, do you think Shifu will let you go? Anger and hatred flashes on Lung Qingwan's face, and the white silk is about to be lifted. Suddenly, a cold female voice seemed to come from the horizon. Qingwan, stop. Before he finished speaking, a snow-white figure with a veil over her face had already approached him like a bolt of lightning. Lung Qingwan's complexion changed, and she unwillingly put down the white silk in her hand. Liu Se, who was within the boundary of the altar, was already howling and pouncing over. Master! Master! Master, save me! I don't want to die! Master! The white figure landed on the ground, bringing with it a chilly fragrance and a faint immortal aura. It was the master of the Tianyi men, Leng Yuexia. The people of Tianyi men surrounding the altar immediately kneel down respectfully when they see her. Greetings, sect master. Leng Yuexia waved her hand, gesturing for them to come over. Very soon, only Leng Yuexia, Lung Qingwan, and Liu Se remained around the altar. Leng Yuexia's displeased gaze sweeps over Lung Qingwan's face and finally falls on Liu Se. She frowns slightly. You said, the Shun musician's successor has really appeared. Yes, master. I saw it with my own eyes, so it's definitely true. Chapter 558. Liu Se doesn't immediately reply to this question. Instead, she pleads with a hoarse voice. Master, in order to report this news to you, this disciple used the sect extermination technique. Now my soul is about to collapse, and I can only live for an hour. I ask Master to save this disciple. This disciple doesn't want to die. This disciple wants to stay in Tianyi men, and serve Master until you die of old age. Impudent! Lung Qingwan finally couldn't bear it, and sternly shouts, Liu Se, are you threatening Master? Liu Se raises her head and meets Lung Yuexia's bone-chilling gaze. She shivers. But thinking that her little life is hanging by a thread, she still clenches her teeth and weeps. Master, you should know that after using the sect extermination technique, you can't even search the soul's memory, otherwise it will immediately collapse. This disciple can only tell you all the information about the Shun musicians if I'm alive. I beg you to save this disciple. This disciple guarantees that the information I bring will absolutely not disappoint Master. Even if her heart is terrified to the extreme, Liu Se still won't relent no matter what. Because she clearly knows that this is her only chance to survive. Bystanders only know that after the people of Tianyi men use the sect extermination technique, their souls will collapse and they will die. But they don't know that the previous generations of Tianyi men's sect masters have mastered a secret technique that can send the collapsed soul into a dying corpse, seizing it for rebirth. In Yanwu continent, Liu Se recklessly uses the sect extermination technique, holding on to a glimmer of hope. The information she brings makes Master have no choice but to save her. Lung Qingwan looks at the Tianyi men's sect master's cold and stern expression, and hurriedly says, Master, you can't be deceived by this traitor. Maybe she doesn't even have the exact information about the Shun musicians. Even if there's no information about her, with our Tianyi men's current strength, there will inevitably be a day when we can find that Shun musician and kill her. Liu Se anxiously says, Master, believe me, what this disciple says is true. I once saw with my own eyes that her whole body transformed into 7 swords of different colors. That should be the Shun musicians' 7-sword spirit, skill that Master had mentioned. Lung Yuexia's expression changed when she heard this. His voice was filled with deep hatred and anger. The 7-sword spirit can already use the 7-sword spirit. That bitch used the 7-sword spirit to make me lose face in front of all the immortals. But, how could it be so fast? In such a short period of time, they actually possess a 3rd-level skill. These demons cannot be left alive, we absolutely cannot allow them to grow. Lung Yuexia's line of sight suddenly turned towards Liu Se, and she said faintly, All right, I'll perform a secret technique for you, and help you be reborn. But if the information you bring about the Shun musicians is not weighty enough, you should know what is 100 times more painful than death. Yes. Yes. Master, your disciple guarantees that every word is true. Liu Se didn't think that she would actually grasp that thread of hope, and was immediately overjoyed. Lung Yuexia suddenly raised her hand and made a grabbing motion in the air. In the next moment, a young girl wearing the uniform of an outer sanctum servant was grabbed by the neck and held in midair. That young girl's face was clearly confused, not knowing what had happened. She opened her mouth, and just as she was about to speak, suddenly there was a cracking sound, and her neck was directly broken. The pitiful young girl didn't even know why she had died, but she had already breathed her last. Chapter 559. One more or one less, basically no one will notice. Lung Yuexia throws the corpse aside, her hands begin to form a complicated seal. Soon after, she sees her hands emit a burst of dazzling light. The light converges into a line, connecting Liu Ce's soul and the young girl's body. Up! A loud shout comes from Lung Yuexia's mouth. The next moment, they see Liu Ce's soul vanish from the altar, and the young girl on the ground slowly opens her eyes. Lung Yuexia's complexion is pale, her forehead faintly oozing with sweat. It's very clear that this kind of secret method of possession also consumes a lot of her body's energy. However, in order to know the news of the Shun musicians, in order to completely destroy this race, Lung Yuexia can no longer care about anything. Lung Qingwan supports Lung Yuexia's somewhat frail body, her resentful and unwilling gaze fiercely glaring at Liu Ce, who is sitting up. Liu Ce is somewhat absent-minded at first. When she realizes that she has really taken over the body, and feels smooth skin, she is immediately wild with joy. The only regret is that this rough outer sect girl's aptitude is really too poor. But she also knows that the better the aptitude of the body, the harder it will be to use the secret method of possession. Liu Ce doesn't dare to show the slightest dissatisfaction. She gratefully kneels in front of Lung Yuexia, snot and tears overflowing. "Master, you have saved this disciple's life. This disciple will never forget," still not speaking, about the news of the Shun musician. Lung Yuexia sternly interrupts her, her voice carrying the urgency of gnashing her teeth. This time Liu Ce doesn't dare to hide anything, and promptly says, "Master, this disciple accidentally met the successor of the Shun musicians in the lower realm. Her name is Jun." Halfway through her words, suddenly a loud rumbling sound is heard. The entire hinterland of Tianyi Men, as if the sky is falling and the earth is splitting, shakes violently. Above their heads, the extremely powerful defensive barrier unexpectedly makes a cracking sound. Then, a crack appeared on the wall. Lung Yuexia and the other two simultaneously look up, aghast. They see a tall figure slowly descending from the crack of the barrier. Like an aloof, unparalleled deity, descending to the human world. Lung Qingwan foolishly looks at the figure descending from the sky, her eyes gradually filling with deep adoration and longing. But when Liu Ce saw the person who had come, her complexion changed greatly. The new body that she had just obtained began to tremble like a sieve. She opened her mouth to speak, but all she could hear was her teeth chattering. His throat felt like it was being choked, and he couldn't make any sound. Lung Yuexia was the first to react. She raised her head and looked at the broken mountain defense formation and the surrounding furnishings that had collapsed due to the earthquake. He was extremely displeased. But thinking of the identity of the visitor, she still slowed down her voice and said, "If Di Jun wishes to pay a visit to our Tianyi Men, our sect will naturally sweep out our beds to welcome you. Why is there a need for Di Jun to make such a big scene and destroy my Tianyi Men's mountain-protecting great formation?" Di Mingju doesn't answer her, he doesn't even look at her. The handsome face that could captivate all the women in the world didn't have the slightest expression. The blue eyes that were as cold as ice slightly turned, and finally fell on Liu Ce's body. Liu Ce's body shook uncontrollably. She watched as this terrifying man walked towards her step by step. Chapter 560. Before she could finish speaking, the young girl's body that Liu Ce had just taken over seems to be pulled away by a tremendous force. A sharp, ear-piercing scream that seems to be able to pierce through a person's eardrum comes out from the young girl's slender throat. Immediately afterwards, Liu Ce's soul is directly pulled out from that body. Her ugly face is extremely distorted, her eyes bulging out, her entire face full of panic and despair. She seems to want to shout out something, but her soul seems to be squeezed by a tremendous force and restrained, no longer able to make a single sound. "Di Jun, what are you doing?" Lung Yuexia suddenly comes back to her senses and shouts in a stern voice, "Still haven't put down my disciple." Lung Qingwan is fascinated as she watches the man's elegant and graceful every move, but in her heart, she feels unspeakably carefree from his action of pulling out Liu Ce's soul. So much so that Lung Qingwan faintly feels that Di Mingju would do that because he knows that she doesn't like Liu Ce, so he specially rushed over to stand up for her. But she thinks of the information that Liu Ce has on the Shun musicians. A faint blush appears on Lung Qingwan's face, and she softly says, Di Jun, I don't know if my senior sister has done something bad to make you unhappy. If that's the case, I will apologize to you on behalf of my senior sister. I hope that you can give me face and spare my senior sister's life. Di Mingju sneers, why would Ben Jun let go of someone who has offended me? Or, can you give me a reason to let her go? Listening to his tone, Lung Qingwan thinks that he's really shaken because of her request. Her heart and spirit are immediately shaken, and her cheeks become even redder. She softly says, Senior sister has returned this time because there's an important news to report to the sect. If Di Jun really wants to punish senior sister, can you wait until after senior sister has inquired about the news? As long as Di Jun agrees to Qingwan's request, no matter how Qingwan and Tian Yi men repay Di Jun in the future, Qingwan will absolutely not complain. When she says this, Lung Qingwan's expression is shy and timid, but also full of affection. That usually cold and aloof face seems to be dyed with the color of peach blossoms, and she's as shy as a young girl. Anyone who saw the otherworldly fairy reveal such an expression would probably be moved and unable to extricate themselves. However, Liu Se, who is trapped by Di Mingju, opens her eyes wide in fright, the bottom of her eyes already filled with despair. Sure enough, the terrifying man slowly turned his head, the corner of his mouth raised into a faintly discernible smile. A voice that only the two of them could hear echoed in her ears, so, you didn't have time to say anything. Master, save me, God, Liu Se struggled fiercely, letting out a hysterical scream. However, she had only said half of her words. A flame suddenly rose on her soul, and in the blink of an eye, it burned her completely. He was annihilated, never to be reincarnated. Lung Qingwan's bashful expression froze, and the corner of her mouth twitched uncontrollably. Lung Yuexia tried to stop him, but it was too late. Her hands were trembling violently, and the veil covering her face was also fluttering because of her extreme anger. Di Mingju, what's the meaning of this? Lung Yuexia finally couldn't bear it, and she screeched, My Tianyi men and your polar domain have no grievances or enmity. Why did you break my mountain-protecting enchantment and kill my disciple? Lung Yuexia is simply going mad with anger. Chapter 561. It's to find out news about the Shun musicians. But now, her divine power has been used up. She hasn't heard anything, yet she's already been killed by Di Mingju. How could she accept this? Di Mingju retracts the hand that had just burned Liu Se. His matchlessly handsome face carries a lofty and indifferent indifference. She offended Ben Jun's people, so Ben Jun wants her dead. Sect Master Leng, do you have any objections? What's more, if Ben Jun didn't remember wrongly, this Liu Se had already been expelled from the Shoshan continent 100 years ago. Tian Yi men also informed the immortals that from then on, they no longer cared about her life or death, leaving her to fend for herself. He lifted one corner of his mouth and smiled coldly. How is it that she has just offended me, and suddenly became the disciple of Master Leng? Lung Yuexia was speechless. She wants to monopolize the information about the Shun musicians. Because she knows that the first person to find the Shun musician and kill the Shun musician's successor will be able to obtain the Shun musician's inheritance. So when Liu Se, that evil disciple, threatened her, she endured it. But she can't say these words to Di Mingju. For a moment, he felt incomparably sullen, but there was nothing he could do. Seeing that Di Mingju is about to leave, Lung Yuexia promptly clenches her teeth and says, I don't know how our sect's evil disciple offended Jun Shong, to make Jun Shong chase us for thousands of miles, to kill us all? Di Mingju's footsteps slightly pause, and he slowly turns his head back. His expression is cold, but a touch of gentleness flashes through the bottom of his eyes. Liu Se injured Ben Jun's fiancée, so even if she escapes to the ends of the earth, she will undoubtedly die. Fiancée? This time, the one who spoke was Lung Qingwan. She suddenly raised her head, her beautiful face filled with disbelief. Monarch, where did you get a fiancée from? Why didn't I know? Wasn't she supposed to be the Theacher's fiancée? Di Mingju sneers. What does it have to do with you whether or not Ben Jun has a fiancée? What right do you have to know? He saw Lung Qingwan rushing over to ask something. Di Mingju raised his hand, and a cloud of dust rose up, causing Lung Qingwan to stagger. With a sway of his body, he soared into the sky and disappeared into the horizon. The altar of Tianyi Men regained its tranquility, as if nothing had happened. Only the crack in the great mountain protecting formation in the sky and the ashen faces of Lung Yuexia and Lung Qingwan indicated what had just happened. Master! Lung Qingwan finally couldn't help but shout with a sobbing tone, Master, didn't you say that one day, I would become the mistress of the polar domain? Why? Why does His Majesty have a fiancé? Lung Yuexia took a deep breath and swallowed the surging grievance and unwillingness in her heart. Only then does he coldly glance at Lung Qingwan. How did your master teach you? Why are you so impatient? But Master, His Majesty, I heard that during this period of time, the Emperor hasn't been in the polar domain all along. Lung Yuexia suddenly said in a deep voice, therefore, the fiancé that the Emperor Monarch mentioned is definitely not someone from the Shoshan continent. Lung Qingwan was startled. Master, you mean, she's just an unpresentable vixen from the cultivation continent. She managed to bewitch the Emperor for a while, and you're already so flustered. In the future, how would she have the qualifications to manage Tianyi Men, and how would she be able to become the mistress of the polar domain? Chapter 562. That's right, after Liu Se was chased out of the Shoshan continent, she must have passed through the flowing immortal platform, and was banished to the Shoshan continent. Therefore, that shameless slut must also be from the cultivation continent. A puny cultivator of the Shoshan continent actually dares to dream of Di Mingju, to dream of becoming the master of the polar domain? Lung Qingwan's face twisted for a moment, then she took a deep breath, and restored her cold and noble appearance. Master is right, this disciple has lost her composure. Even if a cultivator from the cultivation continent managed to seduce the sovereign lord, he would still be unable to obtain the approval of the polar domain's elders, let alone pass the god-punishing tribulation. She probably wouldn't even be qualified to be the god monarch's concubine. I really shouldn't have taken her to heart. That's right. Lung Yuexia reaches out and pats her on the shoulder, saying in a deep voice, the most urgent task now is to find the successor of the Shun musician, kill her, and take away the Shun musician inheritance in her hands. As long as we have the inheritance of the Shun musician, the status of our Tianyi Men will be greatly enhanced, so much so that one day in the future we will be able to stand on equal footing with the polar domain. At that time, would you still be afraid that the position of the polar domain's mistress wouldn't be yours? Lung Qingwan nods heavily, her eyes bursting with a dazzling light. Master, rest assured, disciple will immediately send people to the Shoshan continent to find traces of the Shun musician successor. At the same time, she would also find the vixen who seduced the emperor and tear her into pieces. However, they would never have thought that the place where Liu Se and Di Mingju returned to wasn't the Shoshan continent, but the barren Yanwu continent that doesn't have any spiritual power. Because even if you beat them to death, Lung Qingwan and Lung Yuexia wouldn't want to believe that Di Mingju would seal 90% of his cultivation, and take the enormous risk of going to the Yanwu continent with his real body. As soon as Di Mingju leaves Tianyi Men's mountaintop, Yingmai waits at the mouth of the valley. Behind her was a handsome young man with a mischievous smile on his face. However, upon closer inspection, one could see the anxiety and worry in his eyes. As soon as they sense Di Mingju's appearance, their complexions immediately change, and they hurriedly come to greet him. Jun Shong, how are you? Di Mingju waves his hand. His expression is still cold and detached, but it can't hide his pale, almost transparent complexion. He seemed to want to suppress it, but in the end, he still spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body swayed. Juanshang. Ying Mai and the ruffian youth hurriedly reached out to support him. The worry and helplessness in his eyes almost overflowed like a tide. I'm fine. I just need to rest for a while. Di Mingju says faintly, take me back to the polar domain's forbidden area, and summon Elder Chang alone. Don't let other people in the polar domain know that I'm back. Jun Shong, Elder Chang isn't skilled in medicine after all. You'd better confess. The ruffian youth anxiously wanted to refute something. But in the face of Di Mingju's ice-cold and unwavering gaze, he swallows back his words in the end. Di Mingju looks at Ying Mai and says in a somewhat hoarse voice, Send a message to Han Yi, let him protect Muyan. If Mu Yang is injured in any way, he can wait to stay in the purgatory pool for the rest of his life. Ying Mai quickly nodded, yes, Jun Shong. Also, Di Ming Ju's body sways, his complexion is completely pale. Perhaps it's because of his weakness that his voice is unspeakably gentle. Ben Jun's injury, first, don't let Muyan know. After saying this, Di Ming Ju can no longer support himself and loses consciousness. Chapter 563. Outside the Polar Domain's forbidden area. Elder Chang, how is Jun Shong? Is his injury serious? Seeing Elder Chang come out, several people immediately surround him. Elder Chang slowly exhales. He was injured by the backlash of Tianyi Valley's great mountain guarding array, and then he used the burning heaven art to thoroughly burn his soul. His divine power was exhausted, so his injury isn't light. I'm afraid he'll need to recuperate for a while. Everyone's expression is indescribably grave when they hear this. That ruffian youth finally couldn't bear it, grabbing Ying Mai's collar and angrily rebukes, Ying Mai, what's going on with you and Han Yi? You clearly know that Jun Shong's real body is in the Yenwu continent, and that his strength in the Shoshan continent is less than 10%, yet you guys actually let Jun Shong charge into Tianyi Men alone? Although the master of Tianyi Men's cultivation is far inferior to Di Ming Ju's current strength is only 10% of his original strength. Fortunately, they didn't make a move today. Otherwise, the rumor that Di Ming Ju has lost his cultivation would spread throughout the Shoshan continent. At that time, the consequences would be unthinkable. Xing Lang, calm down. How can Ying Mai and Han Yi interfere with Jun Shong's decision? Elder Chang berates, what's more, if Jun Shong hadn't made a move, how could he have intimidated the master of Tianyi Men with one strike, making her not dare to act blindly without thinking? Otherwise, the identity of the Shun musician's successor would have been known by the master of Tianyi Men long ago. Xing Lang tightly frowns, his expression indignant. What Shun musician's successor? She's just a mortal. What virtue or ability does she have to actually let Jun Shong get injured for her, and take such a big risk for her? If it weren't for this Jun Muyan, Jun Shong wouldn't. Xing Lang, shut up. Ying Mai suddenly speaks, coldly interrupting him. I don't care how you reprimand me and Han Yi, we didn't protect Jun Shong. I'm willing to accept any punishment. But I won't allow anyone to slander the miss, not even you. You. Xing Lang glares at Ying Mai in shock and anger. You've only been with that mortal for a few months, and she's actually hooked your soul? What kind of joke is this? Isn't it just a... Xing Lang. This time, even Elder Chang spoke coldly, his expression indescribably chilling. The Lord is inside. If you're not afraid of dying without a burial, you can continue. Fear appeared on the Star Wolf's face, and then it twisted for a moment. With a hateful wave of his hand, he left. HMPH, Jun Muyan. Wasn't she just a mortal girl? What's so great about it? He must go to the lower realm and meet this woman. He'd like to see what kind of ability this woman has in the end. Not only has she mesmerized Jun Shong, but even Ying Mai and Han Yi are also captivated by her. Star Wolf looked at his own hands, slowly opening and clenching them, his smile cold. He would definitely let that woman know that being the mistress of the Polar Domain wasn't that easy. However, not long after, Star Wolf would regret his decision today so much that he wished he could kill himself with a piece of tofu. At the same time, Yenwu continent, Huang Yao. The dark and gloomy underground gave off a thick stench of decay and blood. In the center of the underground, hundreds of corpse soldiers stood in rows, their bodies rotting and reeking with a strong killing intent. Gong Qianxue sat on the high platform, looking down at the powerful, corpse soldiers, a satisfied expression on her face. Dr. Qian, what do you think of my puppet soldiers? Chapter 564. Each of these corpse soldiers has a cultivation base above Earth stage. But this isn't the most frightening thing. The most frightening thing is that none of them are afraid of death or pain. Even if their hands and feet are cut off, they can still fight bravely. Even if they're really dead, as long as the child GU in their bodies are drawn out, they can still create another corpse soldier. Gong Qianxue proudly raises her eyebrows and suddenly claps her hands. Immediately, someone steps forward and throws a tall man into the crowd of corpse soldiers. As soon as the man lands, he immediately glares at Gong Chenxue with hatred. His whole body soars into the air and recklessly pounces towards Gong Chenxue. Gong Chenxue, you vicious woman, return my father and mother's life. However, before the man can soar, the corpse soldiers below him have already swarmed up. The man desperately revolves his internal force to resist, but in the end, he is outnumbered. He quickly consumes all his internal force and is pressed down by the corpse soldiers. Mournful screams come from below. Chen Qing looks down at the man whose flesh is being bitten off by the corpse soldiers, and can't help but shiver. This time, besides admiration and envy, his face also carries a trace of fear. These corpse soldiers are really too powerful. In this way, in this Yenwu continent, who would still dare to oppose the princess? Gong Chenxue claps her hands again, and as a result, practitioners are sent into the pile of corpse soldiers one after another. And they, without exception, are all torn to pieces by the corpse soldiers. Even their skin and bones are completely eaten. In this terrifying and bloody atmosphere, Gong Chenxue has a leisurely expression. She stretches out her slender fingers and gently fiddles with her neatly trimmed nails. She says with a smile, although these corpse soldiers are powerful, their numbers are still too few. Ben Gong got a batch of Jiu insects from Liu Se that are specially used to raise corpse soldiers, but these Jiu insects need a special method to be raised. That's why I asked Dr. Chen to help. Chen Qing stares blankly, becoming even more fearful and fearful. Princess, please speak. It's easy to raise a corpse soldier's child Jiu, it's enough as long as it's a fresh living body. But the mother Jiu needs the mildest internal force to be raised, then they will swallow each other and finally become the Jiu king. The mildest internal force. Gong Chenxue looked at him meaningfully. In this world, is there anything gentler than the profound energy of doctors and alchemists? After all, the profound energy of other martial artists is used to kill people, but the profound energy of doctors and alchemists is used to save people. Thump. Chen Qing sat on the ground with a terrified expression. Princess, this subordinate is loyal and devoted to you. You wouldn't use this subordinate's body to raise Jiu, right? Gong Chenxue said with a smile. Dr. Chen must be joking. I'm well aware of your loyalty to me. Why would I want your life? Ben Gong wants those doctors in your Xian medical pavilion. She didn't finish her sentence. Suddenly, a scream came from below. Originally, it was very normal for the corpse soldiers to scream. But this voice was very special. It was neither a man's nor a woman's voice, but a unique sharp voice that seemed to be able to pierce through one's eardrums. When Gong Chenxue heard this voice, her expression changed. She abruptly stood up and looked down. One of the corpse soldiers suddenly burst into flames. After a few short breaths, that corpse soldier, along with the Jiu insects in its body, was completely burned away. And this seems to be a signal. Chapter 565. One by one, several hundred corpse soldiers spontaneously combusts without any fire. No. My corpse soldiers. Why? How could this be? In the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, the corpse soldiers below have been completely burned, not even a bit of ash remains. On the contrary, the last person that Gong Chenxue's subordinates threw down, only a few pieces of flesh were bitten off of his hand, and is still alive and well. Gong Chenxue blankly stares at the empty ground below. Her eyes are wide open, her breathing is short, and she can't come back to herself for a long time. How much manpower and material resources did she invest in these corpse soldiers? How hard did it take to raise them? Moreover, she still had to endure that disgusting woman Liu Se, constantly fawning over her, calling her sister. But now, her several years of painstaking effort, her beautiful dream of dominating the Yenwu continent, has been completely destroyed in an instant. Why? Why did the corpse soldiers die? Aren't corpse soldiers supposed to be immortal? Gong Chenxue roars hysterically, her beautiful face hideous and terrifying. Suddenly, she seems to have thought of something, and her complexion turns snow-white. It's the mother Jiu. The mother Jiu is destroyed. Liu Se is dead. That waste Liu Se is actually dead. How could she die? Who killed Liu Se? Who destroyed my corpse soldiers? Gong Qianxue screams, a gloomy and vicious murderous aura diffuses from her body, making everyone retreat. After a long time, Gong Qianshue's face slowly calms down. But in her eyes, there's a cold glint of extreme resentment and resentment. It's Jun Muyan, it's that woman again. Liu Se left to kill that woman. I didn't expect that she would actually kill her instead. Jun Muyan, you slut, why do you have to oppose me again and again? Princess. Qian Qing suddenly cautiously steps forward, lowering his voice to say, Princess, this subordinate also knows this Jun Muyan. She passed my Xian Medical Pavilion's senior doctor's exam, and she also killed my disciple in public. Gong Qianshue's cold and gloomy gaze slowly turns to him. Do you have any way to deal with this slut? The corner of Qian Qing's mouth slightly lifts, revealing a faint arc. Doesn't the princess need a doctor to raise the mother Jiyu? This subordinate believes that the Junji Medical Center's doctor is the best choice. Hearing this, Gong Qianshue's eyes brighten slightly. That's right, without these corpse soldiers, I can raise another batch. Not just the Junji Medical Center's doctors, immediately gather all the doctors in Yanwu continent in the name of Xian Medical Pavilion. At that time, Qian Qing laughed cruelly in a low voice. At that time, these doctors will either pledge allegiance to you, princess, or they can only become nourishment for the mother Jiyu. Princess, you hold Jing Cheng country's army in your hands, you have Heavenly Road Sect and Master Jian Feng as your backup, and you have all the doctors in the world become your subordinates. Why worry about not being able to unify the Yanwu continent? When Gong Qianxue heard this, she laughed in a low and carefree manner. His anger at the destruction of the corpse soldiers he had carefully raised seemed to have lessened a lot. But when she thinks of Jun Muyan, she still gnashes her teeth, revealing a sinister smile. Jun Muyan, hehe, since you're so capable, then Ben Gong will let you become the host of my mother Jiyu. Jun Muyan, Qian Qing murmured in a low voice. She frowned slightly as if she wanted to say something. Why did this name sound so familiar? It seemed like he had heard it a long time ago. Chapter 566. He looked at Gong Qianxue as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, after hesitating for a long time, he swallowed his words. No. That's impossible, right? That Jun Muyan can't be that person from back then, right? Back then, he had diagnosed that the girl who was pregnant with an immortal spirit fetus couldn't possibly still be alive, right? Perhaps it was just the same name, or perhaps it was just a homonym. In the end, Qian Qing resisted the urge to speak her mind. He couldn't wait to take a look at what Jun Muyan looked like. Don't worry, princess. Leave this matter to me. This subordinate guarantees that all the doctors in the entire Yanwu continent will be in the princess's pocket. That Jun Muyan will definitely not be able to escape from the princess's palms. Gong Qianxue smiled coldly and nodded. Neither of them noticed that at the top of the underground palace, there was a pair of eyes staring at them from a small gap. Bai Chen raised his head and frowned. A look of worry flashed across his face. He has to think of a way to inform Mu Yang and be careful of Qian Qing. After dealing with the golden silkworm Jiyu, Mu Yang didn't do anything else. She just hugs Xiao Bao and sleeps next to Di Mingju. When she opened her eyes, the man's handsome face was right in front of her. His expression was so serene, as if the years were peaceful. Muyan was momentarily stunned, unable to come back to her senses. After a long while, she heard Little Treasure's soft voice. Mother Tilda Muyan abruptly comes back to her senses. She smiles and lowers her head to kiss her precious son on the cheek. Since the last time the Tianmo Qin was repaired, in addition to the mountains and rivers, there was also a spring in the space. Although the spring water was very shallow and did not have any special function. But for Mu Yang and Xiao Bao, they were still very happy. This was because their days in the space had become more comfortable. For example, washing up. She turns her head to look at the little baby, who's carved from jade, puffing his cheeks to help him rinse his mouth. Mu Yang's playful heart is aroused, and she can't help but reach out and poke him. Water immediately sprayed out of Little Treasure's pouting mouth. As soon as the dirty water touched the ground, it immediately disappeared without a trace. The self-purification ability of this space was very strong. Even rabbit's poop, if it wasn't deliberately collected, would be immediately absorbed. Xiao Bao helplessly glares at Mu Yang before he finishes washing up and obediently wipes his face dry. He even reaches out to wipe Mu Yan's fingers. This appearance of taking care of people like a little adult simply makes Mu Yan extremely rare. Smiling, she picked up Xiao Bao and kissed his soft and tender cheeks a few times before turning around and walking into the tower. This time, he was surrounded by danger in the battle, and the temporary display of power of the Seven Sword Spirits. This makes Mu Yan realize how important the growth of spiritual power is for her, the successor of the Shun musician. However, the Yanwu continent doesn't even have spiritual power, so naturally, there are no related exercises. Even now, she didn't know what her spirit cultivation level was. Unfortunately, at this time, Di Mingju isn't here, and Han Yi, this guy, is particularly unreliable. He understands spiritual power, but because he was born in the Shoshen continent, he skipped over Xiuzhe all of a sudden. As a result, he doesn't understand the cultivation method of the early stage of spiritual power at all. In desperation, Mu Yang remembers the book in the tower in the space. There were all kinds of books inside. Some were useless, but some were very useful. Chapter 567. However, after being busy for half an hour, she still hasn't found a single useful cultivation secret book. Mu Yan is a little depressed for a moment. Bunny. Xiao Bao, who is watching Mu Yan busying herself on the side, suddenly says to the rabbit in his arms, "Help Nyangqin find book." The rabbit lazily turns over and shakes its short paws. It says, "Bunny wants the little master to knead and hold it high, then go find books." After a moment, Mu Yan sees a snow-white rabbit suddenly leap into the air. In the towering tower, there's an endless bookshelf. But this bookshelf is completely empty, there's not a single book. Why did the fat rabbit fly up there? As she's thinking about this, Mu Yan sees the fat rabbit's small and plump figure suddenly become bigger and thinner. Dazzling light and shadow are projected from the top of the tower. Vaguely, she can see a giant beast, its whole body stretched out. The fur of the giant beast is snow-white, but there's a strange crimson totem on its forehead. That appearance is really indescribably awe-inspiring, beautiful, and holy. It's not the least bit similar to the fat rabbit's silly appearance that only knows how to eat. Bang! After a loud noise, the two books fall straight down from the sky. The pages of the books naturally flip open due to the fall. Under the turbulence of the air, they make a flapping sound. Almost at the same time, that snow-white behemoth suddenly shrinks, like a punctured balloon. It falls straight down along with the books. Thud. Mu Yan catches the books, and Xiao Bao catches the fat rabbit. The fat rabbit yawns tiredly in Xiao Bao's arms, and rubs its furry round face against it. Then, it snores away. Xiao Bao strokes the fat rabbit's fur, and looks at Mu Yan with his sparkling blue eyes. Nyangqin, last time, the classic of supreme drafts was knocked down by the rabbit like this. Even though Xiao Bao has already told her about it, Mu Yan is still a little shocked to see it with her own eyes. Just now, when the rabbit had become bigger, she had felt a powerful pressure that made her tremble. Moreover, just by looking at that gorgeous and domineering appearance, she knows that the fat rabbit's origin is absolutely not simple. Suppressing the bewilderment in her heart, Mu Yan looks at the two books in her hands. On the covers of the two books were written in clerical script, "Perfect Body Forging" and "Perfect Inedia." Mu Yang's breathing quickens. She recalled that in her previous life, Gong Qianxue had once told her that the 9-stage lightning tribulation was the process of tempering the body and nurturing the soul, the process of shaping the spiritual root. The body-forging pill that Gong Qianxue had poisoned was to assist in the formation of the spirit root. Then what is Inedia? Could it be a higher level of spirit cultivation? Feeling a bit nervous, Mu Yang slowly flipped open the first book, Perfect Forging Body. As soon as the book opened, Mu Yang and Xiao Bao immediately felt a majestic and mellow energy assaulting their faces. The book in his hand suddenly disappeared, and a circle of light about the size of an adult's head appeared in front of him. A few lines of words were clearly displayed on it. Spirit Wave Ball with Cultivation Aptitude. What is this? Holding Xiao Bao's hand, Mu Yang cautiously approached the thing. Below that line of large words, There was another line of small words: those with poor aptitude will suffer irreversible damage when undergoing perfect body forging. Therefore, only by passing the test of the spirit wave ball can one read the perfect forging body. They actually need to pass the test to be able to cultivate it. Chapter 568. She immediately puts her hand into the circle of light. She doesn't know if this so-called spirit wave ball is dangerous or not, so she doesn't want Bao Bao to casually touch it. As soon as her hand enters the circle of light, Mu Yang feels a cool and refreshing energy pouring into her body, making her feel so comfortable that she wants to sigh. But before she can sigh, the holy and pure white ball of light actually starts to flicker with a dazzling red light. It's accompanied by a beep 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 warning sound. Immediately after, a line of blood-red characters emerges from the ball of light. Your aptitude for cultivation is too high, exceeding the verification limit of the spirit wave ball. Please quickly withdraw, otherwise, this ball will be scrapped. What the hell? Mu Yang quickly retracts her hand and suspiciously asks, then, do I have the qualifications to practice perfect forging body and perfect inedia? After she retracts her hand, the red light and the warning sound disappear. As if it heard her question, a line of words appears on the ball of light: if your aptitude can't reach perfect forging body, then no one in this world can. No, I don't think there's anyone in this world with a higher aptitude for cultivation than you. Mu Yang becomes more and more suspicious. This so-called spirit wave ball can actually answer her. Isn't it a bit too magical? Just as she is thinking, she sees Xiao Bao suddenly take 2 steps forward, and curiously extends his chubby little hand towards the white ball of light. After 3 breaths, the spirit wave ball makes a loud bang and disappears without a trace. Immediately after, 2 books, plus a small round ball, fall onto Mu Yang's hand. The 2 books are Perfect Forging Body and Perfect Inedia. What's different from before is that after these 2 books are opened, there's a normal concentration of mental cultivation methods, and there's no longer any spirit wave ball. Mu Yang opens the Perfect Forging Body and reads 10 lines at a glance. Many of the questions in her heart are easily solved in this instant. The spirit refining body realm is divided into 10 levels. And now, she's actually at the 7th level of body refining. Moreover, because of her special spiritual roots, Mu Yang's body refining is a perfect forging body. In fact, her body refining process directly absorbs the essence of the 3 realms, and is 100 times stronger than the so-called perfect forging body. But Mu Yang is still very happy to get this book. With the help of the spirit vein, Xiao Bao would be able to perfectly temper his body. On the other side, Xiao Bao was curiously looking at the small round ball that had fallen. Mommy. He raised his little face and revealed a puzzled expression. Mommy, why did Chocho explode? Mu Yang doesn't have time to answer. He heard a weak sobbing voice coming from the small ball. Because your root bone data is too high, it directly burned my psychic wave ball, woo woo. This time, not only Xiao Bao, even Mu Yang looked over in astonishment. Why did this little ball make a sound? And it can talk like a human? What the hell are you? Xiao Bao asked with his big blue eyes. Cho is not a thing. Cho is a little phoenix. Little phoenix? Mu Yang raises her eyebrows. I don't know much, don't lie to me. The legendary divine bird phoenix will grow into a ball. Even if it's a phoenix egg, isn't this too small? Chapter 569. But just now, the psychic wave ball was also burnt. Boo-hoo. Chocho is going to be homeless. Mu Yang stares blankly. Is your master a member of the Shun musician clan? The ball in Xiao Bao's hand shines, as if it's nodding. Yes, Chocho's master is the last leader of the Shun musicians. Master is a good person, but there are so many bad guys who want to beat her. Boo-hoo, those bad guys are so annoying. Boo-hoo-hoo. The little ball speaks incoherently, and in the end, only the sound of crying can be heard. Finally, don't cry. Xiao Bao says with a cold face, you're a real man, how can you cry? But, Chocho is not a male phoenix, Chocho is a female phoenix. If it turns into a human form, Chocho is a girl. So Chocho is not a real man. Boo-hoo. Xiao Bao chokes for the first time. making Mu Yang on the side unable to help but laugh. No, whether it's a man or a woman, in any case, don't cry. What do you want? There's a trace of helplessness in the cold, childish voice. Chocho. Chocho needs a new host, otherwise, Chocho's soul will soon perish. The little ball rolls around in Xiao Bao's palm. Little brother, your breath is so warm and comfortable. Can Chocho temporarily reside in your body? Chocho guarantees that it will always be obedient. If you don't let Chocho speak, Chocho will never speak. Mu Yang raises her eyebrows. Reside in Xiao Bao's body? She slightly narrows her eyes. You won't harm Xiao Bao, will you? I won't. Chocho immediately makes a fawning sound. Chocho is the condensed form of the phoenix primordial spirit. Residing in a person's body, not only will there be no harm, but it can also use the phoenix fire to temper and improve the host's physique, and can even save the host when he is in danger. Unless the host breaks through the realm of cultivation and transforms into an immortal body, my phoenix primordial spirit and it will reject each other. Little brother, pretty sister, what Chocho says is true. Can you believe Chocho? Mu Yang's mouth twitches. This little phoenix calls Xiao Bao little brother, but actually calls her pretty sister. Should he say that she was stupid, or that she was especially good at sweet talking? When Chocho saw that they didn't speak, it thought that they were unwilling, so it hurriedly continued. If you still don't believe Chocho can sign a spiritual pet contract with Little Big Brother and recognize Little Big Brother as its master. In this way, you should know that Chocho won't harm Little Big Brother, right? Establishing a spiritual pet contract. Mu Yang raises her eyebrows and is about to speak. Little Treasure's little face was already taut as he said, will you be able to make me stronger quickly if you reside in my body? Chocho guarantees that you will definitely become stronger than before. Alright, I agree. Mu Yan is startled. Xiao Bao. Xiao Bao raises his delicate and pretty little face, looking at Mu Yan with childish admiration, but his expression is incomparably resolute. Nyang Qin, Xiao Bao must quickly become stronger, only then can he protect Nyang Qin. Also, I can't let that lecher monopolize Nyang Qin. After receiving Xiao Bao's approval, the small sphere suddenly exploded. A strange totem slowly appeared in the air. The totem was shaped like a Tai Chi symbol. However, what separated the two ends was not black and white yin and yang, but a phoenix and a phoenix. Chapter 570. Xiao Bao cuts his finger and drops his blood in the center of the Tai Chi diagram. In a split second, it's radiant. Almost at the same time, two huge fiery wings unfold behind Xiao Bao. The delicate and indifferent little face is reflected in the flames, looking incomparably dignified. Mu Yang stares blankly for a long time, until the fiery wings dissipate, only then does she wake up. Looking at her son, who has returned to naive attachment in an instant, throwing himself into her arms. Mu Yang painfully treats the wound on his finger and can't help but sigh. Her baby's luck is always very good. Entering the fog forest, he can casually find rare drafts. Casually picking up a rabbit, it's an unknown mythological beast, and it even swallowed Gong Chenshue's sacred beast egg. Now, testing the aptitude of his spiritual root, he actually abducted a phoenix as a spiritual pet. Oh, although it's a very childish little phoenix without a physical body. In the following time, Mu Yang has a rare relaxed and comfortable life. The Ghost Wind Valley has been completely renamed to Ghost Flame Valley, which makes Han Yi very happy. He repeatedly says that if Jun Shong comes back, he will be very happy. For half a month, apart from cultivating, Mu Yang also instructs the doctors on alchemy. Until even Dr. Wang and the others can refine second-grade elixirs, most of the doctors are satisfied and grateful to leave. Before leaving, several doctors surround Mu Yang and chatter for a long time. You're a little girl, you must be careful in the Ghost Wind Valley. Although that man looks good, you can't just look at a man's appearance. The most important thing is his conduct, don't be deceived. Xiao Bao is still young, if she can't take care of him alone, she can come to them. Mu Yang has been chattering away for a long time. She has a big headache, but she can't help but feel grateful and warm. In her life, she had rarely enjoyed the care and concern of an elder. Even if it's the Shun father, The amount of time he spends with her is very little. The only one who gives her the most care is probably her foster mother, Seng Xiuying, who has passed away for many years. Therefore, she has long regarded these doctors as her own family. After sending off the doctors, Yang Haotian, Yu Yang, and the others also arrived with a large group of people. After finding out that the entire Ghost Wind Valley belonged to them, Yu Yang and old Dao were simply so happy that they almost went crazy. "Miss, are you serious? The entire Ghost Wind Valley will be our base in the future? Heavens, this is the Ghost Wind Valley that is the easiest to defend and hardest to attack in the entire Yenwu continent. There's a natural barrier, and there's also the poison smog as a cover. Is it really ours?" Before Mu Yang could reply, Han Yi has already corrected her with a smile. "Remember, this place is no longer called Ghost Wind Valley. From now on, it will be called Hell Flame Valley." Hearing the name Nether Flame Valley, Yu Yang and the others looked at each other and revealed meaningful smiles. Even the taciturn Feng Haitang pursed her lips and said, "This name is really not bad. This will be our home from now on." Mu Yang blushes a little under their understanding gazes. But when she heard the word home, she was still a little dazed. Home? Ever since she was set up to get pregnant, she had been wandering from place to place. She no longer knew what home was or where she was. Now, was she and Xiaobao finally going to have a family? Chapter 571. Or. Di Ming Ju's. Touching her somewhat hot cheeks, Muyan coughs softly. The ghastly Flame Valley covers a very large area. It was originally used by the Ghost City to train the Ghost Lord's trusted aides. Nowadays, the number of people in the Heavenly Secret Unit and the Ink Camp isn't small. It's not enough for these people to just rely on medicine. They need to constantly train and improve every day, and they also need opportunities for actual combat. I know. Yu Yang excitedly raised her voice. "In the Ghost Wind Valley." "No, that's not right. In the Netherflame Valley, there's a crying ghost mountain. There are all kinds of fierce beasts inside, as well as all kinds of natural dangers. It's used to train our divine secret battalion soldiers." Just now, it just so happens. Yu Yang's words had yet to finish when she saw Yang Haotian walk out without a word. The swiftness of his movements was completely different from his usual dull appearance. Yu Yang suddenly had a bad premonition and quickly asked, "Yang Haotian, what are you going to do?" Guan Hu, who's following behind Yang Haotian, turns around and says with a mischievous smile, "Miss Ruyan, compared to your Tianji unit, our Ink Camp needs Weeping Ghost Mountain as a training ground even more. Nowadays, the people of our Ink Camp are used to seeing blood. An ordinary battle array is simply not enough for them to warm up. This place, Weeping Ghost Mountain, is more than suitable for us. The Ink Camp is the first force to form around Muyan. After going through several actual battles, plus taking on a lot of mercenary missions, those veterans of the Ink Camp are no longer the gangster slaves who came out of the WN Ren coup. Now, for them, the drafts and zither sounds that used to make them wish they were dead, they can now completely endure it without batting an eyelid. They even wish they could endure it a few more times. What they lacked the most right now was actual combat. Therefore, they were determined to obtain the Weeping Ghost Mountain. Didn't they see that even Commander Yang, who had always been quiet and had no sense of existence, was anxious this time? Bastard! Yu Yang jumped up. "I was the one who suggested it first. I reserved the Ghost Weeping Mountain first. Don't snatch it from me. Heh, first come first served. Miss Ruyan wouldn't be unaware of this logic, right? Bye, you." However, before Guan Hu could finish speaking, a figure had already dashed out like a bolt of lightning. Yu Yang also hears Fang Jingya's quiet voice, "First come, first served, we got it first. Commander Yang and Captain Guan, don't fight with us." After being rescued by Muyan, Fang Jingya has completely regarded herself as a spy. Therefore, she focused on cultivating her observational skills and lightness skills. Therefore, in the blink of an eye, her figure had already disappeared without a trace like a wisp of green smoke. "Fuck. Commander, let's quickly chase after them." Not waiting for Guan Hu to finish speaking, Yang Haotian's figure had already disappeared without a trace. Seeing this, Yu Yang burst into laughter and chased after them. Watching them leave, a gentle smile appeared on Feng Haitang's cold face. Suddenly, she looks at Mu Yan and says softly, "Miss, thank you." Mu Yang raises her eyebrows, her expression languid. "Thank me for what?" "Thank you, for giving Haotian a new life. That was a true rebirth. It didn't just give Yang Haotian life. It also gave him the hope of survival and happiness." However, it was obvious that the pain of the past had slowly faded, so why was Haotian still unwilling to accept her? Chapter 572. The smile on his face is gradually replaced by sadness. Mu Yang sees this scene and wants to say something, but she sees Dr. Song hurriedly coming in, followed by Chen Qingfeng. Most of the doctors in the ghastly Flame Valley have left, only Dr. Song and Dr. Wang stayed behind. First, it's to study Professor Mu Yang's alchemy and refining special drafts. Second, it's to help Mu Yang sort out the ghastly Flame Valley's medicine storehouse. It should be known that Ghost King Jiyu didn't say that he would give the entire Ghost Wind Valley to Mu Yang for nothing. That is, the valley, the poison smog, and all the materials inside, all given to Mu Yang. Not to mention other things, just sorting out those rare and precious herbs would take a huge amount of manpower and material resources. Now, besides herself, Chen Qingfeng is the only one around Mu Yang who knows medicine. So Dr. Song and the others volunteered to stay. During this time, Chen Qingfeng, who has been learning from Dr. Song and the others, also benefited a lot. "Little girl, this old man and the other doctors have to go back first." "What's wrong?" Mu Yang stares blankly. Seeing a trace of worry on their faces, she quickly asks, "Is there something wrong?" "It's not a big deal." Dr. Song shakes his head. "It's just that this old man received news that a plague has appeared in Lotus Flower Town in the north of Jingcheng country. Although not many people died, there are a lot of people who are sick. Dr. Du and the others sent a message, saying that they have rushed to Lotus Flower Town, but there are still too few doctors. They are too busy, so they asked us to rush over to help." "A plague has appeared in Lotus Flower Town?" Mu Yang frowns, puzzled over it. In her previous life, because she trusted Gong Qianxue and followed her, she spent most of her time in Jingcheng country. At that time, she had never heard of a plague in Jingcheng country. But then, Mu Yang shakes her head. It could also be that the plague was not serious and was quickly cured, so it did not spread. After all, in her previous life, her medical skills could not be considered particularly outstanding. "Dr. Song, why don't I go with you? Although it may not be serious, it is a plague after all. As a doctor, the most important thing is to help the world and save people." Mu Yang has always guarded this point. Even when the hatred is at its deepest, she has never given up. "No need." Dr. Song waved his hand casually. "According to Dr. Du and the others, although it's a plague this time, the illness isn't as serious as imagined. After they prescribed the right medicine, the patient's conditions are much better. There's no need for you to do anything at all." Seeing that Mu Yang is still deeply worried, Chen Qingfeng says from the side, "Miss, we all know that the little Gongzi is going to advance during this period of time. It's a critical juncture, you can't be distracted. Why don't I go with Dr. Song? If the condition is really serious, I will come back to inform you." That's right, Xiaobao was currently trying to break through to heaven rank. However, this was not the main point. The main point was that after Mu Yang discovered the perfect body forging manual, she started to let Xiaobao cultivate next to the spiritual vein. The mental cultivation technique taught in the perfect body tempering art was called the heart source style body tempering art. In Xiaobao to be, he to be, he has yang, he, the clan, he has, to, he, half, he has, to. Chapter 573. Therefore, during this time, Mu Yan really can't be distracted. Finally, she nods and says, "Okay, then Dr. Song, be careful. These drafts and elixirs are life-saving. Take them with you, and if you encounter any life-threatening danger, take them." Haha, little girl loves to worry. This old man is very powerful, how could there be danger so easily? Rest assured, when this old man has solved the plague, I will come back to your Hellfire Valley. At that time, don't despise this old man. Watching Dr. Song's back slowly disappearing into the mist, Muyin can't help but hold her heart. Her heart is pounding non-stop, and her mind is inexplicably swirling with an ominous premonition. Is it because you haven't come back yet? She looks up at the blue sky, her eyes carrying a longing that even she herself isn't aware of. Di Mingju, are you safe? Don't forget, you promised me that you will come back. Jingcheng Country, Lotus Town. There's a rancid smell coming from the dim underground. There's a cage separated by iron bars, each holding a person. Each of them is bony, and their breathing is weak, as if they could faint at any time. If Muyin were here, she would find that Dr. Song, Dr. Du, and Chen Qingfeng, who left Hellfire Valley, are all here. But unlike half a month ago, Dr. Song and Dr. Du are now haggard and thin. Their complexions are ashen, carrying a deathly aura. But only their bellies are bulging, as if they're pregnant. In particular, Dr. Du and the others, who left Hellfire Valley earlier, are so thin that they're almost out of shape. A thin layer of skin wraps around the bones, and the whole person seems to have aged by several decades. Princess, these are the doctors who are raising the Mother GU. Now, there are 68 Mother GU being raised. Once these Mother GU break out of their bodies and devour each other, the real golden silkworm GU will be born. On the narrow path, Qian Qing leads Gong Qianxue forward, proudly saying, "These doctors were deceived by this subordinate with the news of the plague in Lotus Town. Among them are Dr. Song and Dr. Du, who are very skilled in medicine. Their internal force really provides excellent nourishment for the Mother GU." Qian Qing hadn't even finished speaking when Dr. Song suddenly pounced out of the cage and roared, "Bastard! You bunch of bastards!" For his own selfish desires, he actually disregarded the lives of an entire city's citizens. That was tens of thousands of commoners, tens of thousands of commoners. You actually turned innocent people like them into corpse soldiers. How dare you? Aren't you afraid of retribution? Qian Qing sneered, looking condescendingly at Dr. Song, whose belly was bulging as if he had gone mad. "What I cultivated for Princess is the most precious golden silkworm GU. You should feel honored to become its nourishment." As he speaks, Qian Qing fawningly looks at Gong Qianxue. This subordinate guarantees that these Mother GU would only need another month at most to break out of the abdomen. At that time, Princess, your millions of corpse soldiers would be able to sweep across the Yanwu continent. However, Gong Qianxue doesn't reveal any good expression. Instead, she coldly glances at him. "Jun Muyin? Why isn't she here?" Chapter 574. Those who wanted to break in never came out again. Trash. Gong Qianxue coldly glances at him. "If you can't enter the Ghost Wind Valley, you have no other way?" Qian Qing stares blankly, becoming even more terrified. He sees Gong Qianxue suddenly clap her hands, and very soon, a group of black-clothed people come over, dragging a group of people. Each and every one of these people are dressed in rags, their bodies riddled with scars. It's very clear that they've gone through a fierce fight. Qian Qing's gaze suddenly falls on the face of one of the youths, revealing a bewildered expression. He hears Gong Qianxue coldly say, "Do you know who these two are?" She points to two of the unconscious people. He sees that these two have the lightest injuries, and they're protected by those people riddled with scars. One of them is relatively young, with a handsome appearance. The other is already middle-aged, but also has an extraordinary temperament. Qian Qing's gaze unblinkingly stares at that youth's face, his expression becoming more and more bewildered. Finally, he couldn't help but raise his voice to ask, "Princess, who is this person?" Gong Qianxue slightly narrows her eyes and says, "I've already sent people to investigate. Although that slut Jun Muyin is surnamed Jun, she's the Shen family's adopted daughter. And that slut still values her adoptive father and brother, leaving a lot of people by their side to protect them. Especially this brother, He." Gong Qianxue raises her foot and heavily steps on Shen Jinglin's arm. Shen Jinglin immediately lets out a cry of pain, opening his eyes. Seeing the scene before him, Shen Jinglin doesn't panic, but coldly glares at Gong Qianxue. "Who are you? Why do you want to capture me?" Before Gong Qianxue could speak, she sees Qian Qing suddenly stride forward, staring unwaveringly at his face. Young Master Shen, do you still recognize this old man? You. Shen Jinglin slightly frowns as he looks at him, seemingly finding him somewhat familiar. After a long time, he suddenly widens his eyes. You're the doctor who diagnosed my sister that day. Why are you here? Hearing his answer, Chen Qing suddenly stands up. He doesn't even care that Gong Qianxue is in front of him, throwing his head back and laughing. This is really wearing out iron shoes in fruitless search, finding it by chance without even looking for it. Gong Qianxue frowns at him. What are you talking about? Princess. Chen Qing's voice trembled with excitement. Do you remember how I discovered the immortal fetus? It's because a young girl didn't know she was pregnant. Under the guidance of her brother, she came to seek treatment. From her pulse, I detected the unique fluctuation of immortal qi in the world. Gong Qianxue's eyes widened a little. Her originally beautiful eyebrows and eyes almost popped out due to extreme excitement and greed. Are you saying that the woman who was pregnant with the immortal spirit fetus back then was Jun Muyan? Chen Qing nodded repeatedly, his eyes reddening. When this subordinate heard the name Jun Muyan, I felt that it was familiar, but I thought it was just a coincidence. I didn't expect it to be true. Unexpectedly, it was really the woman who was pregnant with the immortal fetus. Princess, this subordinate has heard that Jun Muyan has a 4-year-old child by her side all year round, calling her Nyang Qin. In this way, that child's age matches up. In other words. Chapter 575. Congratulations, Princess. Congratulations, Princess. That immortal fetus belongs to the princess. It will eventually return to the princess's hand. Gong Qianxue couldn't bear it any longer, facing upwards and laughing. Jun Muyan, so it's you. You escaped back then, but now, you can no longer escape from the palm of my hand. I will definitely refine you mother and son into an elixir, to help me on my path to blue sky. Ha 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 ha. You, what are you talking about? Shen Jinglin seems to understand what she's saying, suddenly raising his voice. What do you want to do to my sister and nephew? Gong Qianxue's gaze slowly falls on Shen Jinglin, the corners of her mouth hooking up into a cruel smile. Jun Muyan is currently holed up in the Ghost Wind Valley. It would be troublesome to catch her. I don't think a soft lure will work. It would be better to directly send a gift to Jun Muyan. Saying that, a cold light flashes in her hand, and a sword appears in her palm. She slants at Shen Jinglin's hands and feet. Tell me, should I cut off Jun Muyan's most beloved brother's hand and send it to her, or cut off his foot and send it? How about this? It would be better to cut it off and send it over. I believe that Jun Muyan will definitely like it very much, and then obediently rush over. Shen Jinglin's pupils suddenly contract. Beside him, Chang Yu and the Ink Camp people have woken up from their trance. Their faces are aghast, and they crazily want to rush over. Stop, you're not allowed to hurt our Gongzi. That's the person that the Miss and Little Master had instructed them to protect. Gong Qianxue disdainfully laughs, and the sword in her hand falls. But she sees a figure recklessly rush over, blocking Shen Jinglin's body. A Ink Camp soldier has a long gash cut from his heart to his abdomen, and blood splatters everywhere. He doesn't reveal a trace of fear or despair. Instead, he turns his head to look at the unharmed Shen Jinglin, and closes his eyes with peace of mind. Shen Jinglin lets out an almost insane howl, struggling with all his might to break free from the ropes binding him. If you have the ability, then kill me. Just kill me. Gong Qianxue casually flings away the bloodstains on her sword. She kicks away the Ink Camp soldier that's crawling over to protect Shen Jinglin, and chuckles. You're the gift that I want to give to Muyan. How could I casually kill you? Don't worry, I'm only going to chop off your limbs. There are many doctors around, and they won't let you die. You're worse than pigs and dogs. You will suffer retribution. When Dr. Song and Chen Qingfeng saw this, their eyes widened. They wanted to rush out, but they were powerless. They could only watch helplessly as Gong Qianxue's sword fell into Shen Jinglin's hand. At this moment, there was a loud bang and a plume of smoke rose into the sky from where they were standing. Then, a white figure rushed in like a ghost, quickly picked up Shen Jinglin on the ground, and fled. Who is it? Gong Qianxue let out a shriek. The profound energy in her hand suddenly waved out, and a storm swept through. In an instant, she blew away the white smoke. But when she looked over, all she could see was a white figure. Gong Qianxue gnashed her teeth and said, "Who is that person? How could he enter this underground palace?" The black-clothed man standing next to Gong Qianxue said in a low voice, "Princess, if this subordinate didn't see wrong, that should be Bai Chen." Chapter 576. Bai Chen. Gong Qianxue squeezed out those 3 words from between her lips and teeth, and sneered, "What a good Bai Chen, to actually dare to betray this Gong. Duo Yang, give chase for Ben Gong. You must dismember this traitor Bai Chen into 10,000 pieces, and then bring Shen Jinglin back alive." Bai Chen was merely at the peak of heaven stage, while Duo Yang was a high-level Xiantian. Killing Bai Chen was as easy as flipping a palm. "Yes, princess." Duo Yang accepted the order and immediately chased after her. Hellflame Valley. When Mu Yang came out of the space, it was already half a month later. She didn't expect that when she was using her Shun musician skills to help Xiao Bao advance and warm up his body, she herself would also reach the high pre-celestial level. Therefore, she entered secluded cultivation with Xiao Bao. By the time she opened her eyes again, half a month had passed, and she had finally reached the pinnacle of the Xiantian realm. She was only a step away from tempering her body and soul, and tempering her body with the lightning tribulation. It was just that others tempered their bodies and refined their souls in order to reconstruct their spirit roots. However, her spirit root had already taken shape, and her spirit cultivation had already reached the 8th stage of body tempering. So, what kind of changes would happen to her body when the lightning tribulation tempers her body? He lowered his head to look at Xiao Bao, who was still in seclusion. He had long since broken through to high-tier heaven tier, but he still hadn't come out of seclusion. "I wonder what kind of realm my darling will reach after this closed-door cultivation." After carefully inspecting Xiao Bao and making sure that there are no problems, Muyan leaves the space. "Miss, you're finally out of seclusion." Seeing Muyan come out, Yu Yang hurriedly steps forward, her face full of worry. Mu Yang's heart couldn't help but thump. Sure enough, she heard Yu Yang say, "Miss, something happened in Tianyuan City. Old Master and Young Master are gone." "What?" Mu Yang's complexion changed. "You said that father and brother are missing, what do you mean?" Yu Yang's entire face is filled with shame as she says, "Our Tianji unit actually has manpower in Tianyuan City, but because Master and Gongzi are protected by the people from the ink camp, plus with the medicine that Miss left behind, we thought that there wouldn't be any problem. Until a few days ago. In one night, the Shun family and the people in the Junji Medical Center all disappeared. We didn't even find a corpse, but we found traces of a fight. I'm afraid. Old Master and Young Master Shun are in trouble. Father and brother, why didn't you inform me earlier?" Mu Yang's voice suddenly rose, her face filled with anger and anxiety. Yu Yang wanted to say something but hesitated. "But miss, you and little Gongzi are both in closed-door training. I'm afraid that if I inform you." Mu Yang takes a deep breath and suppresses the irritation in her heart. She understood what Yu Yang meant. At such a crucial moment of advancement, if he were to tell her such news and distract her, or even cause her to go berserk, the consequences would be unthinkable. However, Yu Yang didn't understand what big brother and father meant to her. Especially her brother. How could she allow her brother, who was once riddled with holes, to suffer any more harm? "Miss, I'm sorry. It's all this subordinate's decision." Yu Yang knelt down with red eyes. "Miss, if you want to blame someone, blame me." Feng Haitang also knelt down. "I didn't let them disturb you." Yang Haotian and old Dao both knelt down. Chapter 577. The corner of her mouth slowly hooks up into a bloodthirsty curve. Her voice is incomparably pleasant, but it can make people feel cold all over. "I'd like to know who dares to touch my, Jun Muyan's people." Yu Yang promptly says, reporting to Miss, this subordinate had the Tianji unit investigate overnight. In the end, they didn't find out who kidnapped the Shen family and the Junji Medical Center. But the Tianji unit did find some clues of a large group of people. One of them seems to be heading in the direction of Jingcheng Country's Lianhua town. Lianhua town? Muyan stares blankly, slightly frowning. Why does she feel that this name is somewhat familiar? Suddenly, her pupils suddenly contract. Lianhua Town, isn't that the town where Dr. Song and the others went because of the plague? Yu Yang nods and says, Miss, this Lianhua Town is very strange. It's said that there's a plague. But this subordinate has investigated, and there's not the slightest sign of it spreading out from Lianhua Town. However, none of the doctors who rushed there came out, and there's not even the slightest bit of news. Muyan's complexion becomes more and more unsightly. Could it be that not only did something happen to her brother and father, even Dr. Song and Chen Qingfeng also met with an accident? Miss. A person from the ink camp hurries in, bowing and saying, Miss, there's a group of people several kilometers away from the Hellfire Valley, and they seem to be chasing after 2 people. Miss, should we make a move? Muyan slightly narrows her eyes, suddenly standing up and saying, let's go out and take a look. Outside the Hellfire Valley. Bai Chen can't remember how many injuries he's suffered. During these 3 days and 3 nights of fleeing, his clothes have been soaked in blood again and again, coagulated and dried, and then dyed red again with new bloodstains. The most dangerous time was when Duo Yang, a peak pre-celestial, caught up with him and gave him a fatal blow. He risked it all and jumped off the cliff with Shen Jinglin. In a situation of certain death, he took the life-saving medicine that Muyan gave him, and finally made it through. Duo Yang had never thought that he could survive. However, he doesn't think that Shen Jinglin is dead. So he sent his guards, dozens of heaven stage and above practitioners, to chase them all the way down the cliff. Duo Yang's men obviously didn't expect that Bai Chen would still be alive after receiving Duo Yang's fatal blow. But he didn't take him seriously. It was true that Bai Chen was at the peak of heaven rank. But among them, there were more than 10 peak heaven stage warriors, and even 3 innate stage warriors. Even if Bai Chen and Shen Jinglin had 3 heads and 6 arms, it would still be impossible for them to escape from the palm of their hands. In order to successfully escape the pursuit, Bai Chen had no choice but to take Shen Jinglin to hide in the Wuwang Mountains. The Wuwang mountain range stretches for thousands of miles. Kaiyang country has it, Jingcheng country also has it. All of the Wuwang mountain ranges have a special characteristic. At night, all the most ferocious exotic beasts would come out in packs. Even an inborn expert would be trampled to death like an ant under the attack of thousands of beasts. But Bai Chen had no other choice. If they didn't take Shen Jinglin to hide in the Wuwang mountain range, they wouldn't even be able to hold on for an hour. They thought that the 2 of them would easily die in the Wuwang mountain range. Unexpectedly, a miraculous scene occurred. When the beasts got close to Bai Chen, they would suddenly sniff the air with their noses. Then, they would reveal a terrified expression and flee without a trace. Chapter 578. What the strange beast was afraid of was not him, but a black bead on his body. This black bead was given to him by Xiao Bao when they parted in the Wuwang Mountains. Xiao Bao said that this was a gift from Rabbit. Bai Chen did not expect that it would leave him and Shen Jinglin a chance of survival. It turned out to be this inconspicuous black bead. It took 3 nights for Bai Chen to bring Shen Jinglin here. But in the end, it could only be here. The internal force in his body had been completely consumed. The cut on his leg had already severed the blood vessels in his thigh. Blood gushed out like a fountain, dyeing the grass below red. Bai Chen's body swayed. The excessive blood loss made his vision blurred, and his whole body became cold little by little. He knew that he couldn't make it this time. You! Hurry up and leave. Bai Chen glanced at Shen Jinglin. His voice was incomparably hoarse, but it was indescribably calm. Not far ahead is the Nether Flame Valley. That is Mu Yang's territory. Once you enter, you will be safe. What nonsense are you talking about? Shen Jinglin let out a roar like a trapped beast. You became like this in order to save me. How can I leave you behind? Bai Chen chuckles softly. His face is stained with blood to the point where it's almost impossible to see his true appearance, but he reveals a gentle smile. Ever since Sitong left, in fact, I've long since wanted to die, to be able to give Gong Qianxue a little trouble, to be able to rescue Muyan's brother. I'm already perfectly satisfied. He turned to look at Shen Jinglin, and there was a trace of sadness at the bottom of his calm eyes. "Tell Mu Yang for me, a gentleman will die for his bosom friend. After Sitong's death, I am still struggling at death's door, for revenge, and also because she and my fellow brothers supported me, but I'm sorry. Bai Chen, thank her for choosing me, but I probably can't be the leader of her Great Void Battalion. Let her find someone else. I won't help you convey it." Shun Jinglin clenched his teeth, but he couldn't help but shed tears. "Bai Chen, listen, if you want to say something to Yang Yang, just tell her yourself, I will never help you convey it. Also, don't forget that you haven't gotten your revenge yet. How can you die now?" With a clang, Shun Jinglin swung away the sword of one of them. But the other one swung at him from the other side. After all, he was only at the Earth realm. That strike, which contained boundless pressure, caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood. The hand he used to block the attack let out a crisp cracking sound and fell to the ground. In fact, if it wasn't for Gong Chenxue saying that Shun Jinglin must be captured alive, he had already died 1,000 times. But if it was just to chop off his limbs and bring him back alive, it was possible. The person who attacked Shun Jinglin laughed and said, "Don't be so modest. Don't worry, none of you will escape. Bai Chen, you have betrayed Her Highness. You must die. As for Shun Jinglin, the princess only wants you to live. It doesn't matter how you live. After I cut you into a human swine, I will remove your limbs and throw them into the Hellfire Valley. After that, I will bring you to report to the princess. How do you think the princess will reward us?" Chapter 579. However, the expected scene of his arm being chopped off and blood splattering everywhere did not appear. Shun Jinglin only felt himself being ruthlessly pushed away. As he staggered, he saw Bai Chen blocking in front of him. A sword pierced through his heart. However, Bai Chen firmly grasped the sword and looked back at him, his expression calm and resolute. "Have you forgotten what our biggest purpose is? It's not to save your life, but to tell Muyin the news. Do you really want to let our efforts all go to waste?" Shun Jinglin looked at the sword that had pierced Bai Chen's body, his eyes suddenly turning crimson. Not only did he not turn around and run away, he recklessly rushed over. His roar carried a bloodthirsty madness. "Bai Chen, let me abandon my brother and escape. Only if I die. Rather than cowardly seeking survival, I would rather perish together with this group of animals." Ha 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 ha. Dozens of black-clothed men laughed together. Their laughter was full of disdain. The leader calmly lifted the sword that had pierced through Bai Chen and lightly swung it. Bai Chen, who had already been skewered on the sword, could only be swung back and forth powerlessly. "Good. I'm standing right here, come and kill me. An Earth stage waste actually dares to hoot at us. Animals, I'll kill you." At this moment, Shun Jinglin's internal force frantically burst out. He no longer cared whether his body would be injured or not, he only wanted to dismember the scum before him into 10,000 pieces. The leader's cultivation was at the early pre-celestial level, and he just looked at Shun Jinglin casually attacking him. Bai Chen, who was still swinging his sword, did not even intend to block. However, at this moment, he suddenly heard a melodious music. That music seemed to come from the horizon, piercing straight into people's hearts. The leader of the black-clothed men was dazed for a moment, and then he heard a poochie sound. It was the sound of a sharp blade piercing into flesh, accompanied by a sharp pain in his chest. He slowly and stiffly lowered his head. Looking at the sword that had pierced through his chest, he looked at Shun Jinglin, who was holding the sword and piercing him. His face slowly floated with disbelief. Why was he pierced by the sword of an earth-rank trash? Why did he die at the hands of a piece of trash? However, he could no longer get an answer. The last thing that remained in his field of vision. It was a huge army that suddenly rushed out from the direction of the Hellfire Valley. His companions beside him let out miserable screams one after another, and the sound of heads rolling on the ground could be heard. Yang Yang. Seeing the beautiful girl rushing over, Shun Jinglin's hoarse voice almost broke into tears. Yang Yang, quickly save Bai Chen. Quick, save him. It's all because of me that he. Shun Jinglin's trembling gaze fell on Bai Chen, who was not far away. The man could no longer hold back his hot tears as they flowed down. Only to see the person who was still like an orchid and a jade tree a few days ago, the former #1 genius of Yenwu continent. Now, it was as cold as a corpse. The original color of the white clothes on his body could no longer be seen. All that was left was a patch of blood red. On the contrary, his face and lips were as pale as a piece of paper, without any signs of life. Chapter 580. Touching the ice-cold skin, and the almost disappeared pulse under the skin, makes her heart sink a little. This isn't a fatal injury that can be saved by a life-saving draft. Rather, the vitality in his body is already close to nothing. It's like a person's birth, old age, sickness, and death, it's almost irreversible. Yang Yang. Shun Jinglin looks at Mu Yang's face, his voice trembling a little. Will he die? Even you can't save him. No. I will save him. Mu Yang resolutely replies, but there's not enough time, I won't be able to rush back to Hellfire Valley to save him. You guys. She looks at the people of the Ink camp who came out with her to kill the enemy. You guys, gather everyone in Hellfire Valley to protect me. Before I finish saving him, don't let anyone come within a radius of 5 miles. Remember, within a radius of 5 miles. Yes, miss. The people of the Ink camp quickly take the order and retreat, forming a huge encirclement to protect Mu Yang and Bai Ichen. Seeing that the surrounding people have disappeared, Mu Yang enters the space without hesitation, takes out the Tian Mo Qin, and gives it a heavy knock. Qi Huang, come out. After a moment, a lazy voice is heard, impudent. Do you think this sage is someone that you can call at will? The phantom of a stunningly beautiful youth appears in front of her, glaring at Mu Yang with an unkind expression. Mu Yang is completely in no mood to pay attention to him. I remember that among the 3rd level Shun musician skills, there's a skill called Saint of Benevolence, which can transfer one's vitality to others. Isn't that right? Hearing that, Qi Huang frowns slightly. You want to use the Saint of Benevolence skill? You should know that this skill is one of the most powerful auxiliary skills of the Shun musicians. Even if you've really reached the 3rd level, using it will still be risky, not to mention if you want to use it beyond your level. Don't talk nonsense, just tell me, can you let me use it beyond my level? Mu Yang's expression is indescribably calm. As for the price, I will bear it myself. From the moment I became a doctor, I was prepared to give up some things to save patients. What's more, Bai Ichen became like this because of her brother. How could she watch him die and not save him? Qi Huang looked deeply at her for a while, his expression a little dazed. After a while, he said, all right, I promise you. With that, Qi Huang waved his hand and a ray of light entered Mu Yang's body. 7 brilliance, on the other hand, seemed to have consumed too much energy and instantly dissipated. Mu Yan felt something flash in her mind, and then it suddenly filled up all of her thoughts. Everything about Saint's benevolence was clearly reflected in her mind, as if it had been engraved into her soul. Without a moment's delay, Mu Yang quickly leaves the space, takes out the Tian Mo Qin, and gently plucks the strings. With the sound of the zither, countless specks of light appeared like fireflies. Little by little, they were sent into Bai Ichen's body. Most of the light spots floated out of her body and entered Bai Ichen's body. The sound of the zither continues for half an hour, and Mu Yan's complexion becomes paler and paler. Cough, cough, cough. Bai Ichen coughed a few times and opened his eyes. His pale face actually had a tinge of redness. Chapter 581. Then, his eyes fall on Mu Yan's face, and his expression becomes peaceful and grateful for a moment. Mu Yan, you saved me again. Mu Yan gently shakes her head, looking at his unscathed appearance. Her pale face shows a weak smile. You're wrong, it should be me. Thank you, for helping me again. Why is your face so bad? Bai Ichen's face suddenly changes. Is it because you saved me? Mu Yan waves her hand. I'm fine, I just overused my internal force. I'll be fine after a rest. Bai Ichen is about to ask again when Shun Jinglin and the others discover that the sound of the zither has stopped. They rush over like lightning. Seeing Bai Ichen standing well, Shun Jinglin's tears almost come out again. Brother Bai, you're still alive, you really came back to life. Yang Yang, you really saved him. Yang Yang. Before Shen Jinglin can finish his words, he sees his sister's body sway not far away. She can no longer support herself, and softly falls down. Muyan feels like she's walking in a white mist, everything in front of her seems to be covered with a layer of gauze, and she can't see clearly. Suddenly, not far from her, a zither appears. The sound of the zither emits a sparkling light, and there are a lot of light spots above the zither. Some of the light spots are as bright as stars, and some are so dim that they're almost invisible. Muyan is wondering what these light spots are, when suddenly, she hears a soft and melodious female voice. Jun Muyan, you are very good. You're willing to give up your own vitality, and take the risk of using a skill that's beyond your level to save a person who has no relatives or friends. You already have the most precious skill of a doctor, divine hands of benevolence. Muyan suddenly turns around and looks around. Who's talking? However, the voice doesn't seem to hear her question at all, and continues to speak. Originally, the Shun musician's third-level skill can only be activated after reaching the realm of Inedia. But your divine hands of benevolence has triggered the opportunity one left in the Tianmo Qin, so I will make an exception and unseal the Shun musician's third-level skill in advance. I hope that one day, you can avenge the Shun musicians, and also pass on the Shun musicians' wish to save the world and the people to everyone in the three realms. Let them know that the Shun musicians are not demons, but the saviors of heaven and earth. Mu Yang's pupils suddenly widen, unlocking the god musician's third-level skill in advance. Who exactly are you? However, before she could finish her sentence, everything in front of her disappeared without a trace. She hears Shen Jinglin's anxious voice. Yang Yang, how are you? Muyan opens her eyes and sees Shen Jinglin, Bai Chen, and everyone else who are so anxious that they're about to cry. She was in a daze for a moment, then revealed a slight smile. Don't worry, I'm fine. I'm just exhausted. Not only was she fine, but she had also profited from her misfortune. Using the saint's benevolence above her level will unexpectedly trigger a lucky chance, allowing her to unlock all the skills of a level 3 Shen musician in advance. Moreover, the vitality that she had lost had all returned just now. Mu Yang only takes a cursory look at the skills of a third-level Shen musician and is shocked by its power. This time, no matter who schemed against her and hurt her loved ones, she would make them pay a painful price. Chapter 582. After not seeing him for a while, Shen Jinglin's appearance is so thin and haggard that he almost doesn't look like a human. Muyan's nose feels sour, but she doesn't have time to reminisce about the past. Instead, she lowers her voice. Brother, tell me, what happened? What about father? And how are the other people in Junji Medical Center now? Shen Jinglin and Bai Ichen quickly repeat what they heard from Gong Qianxue. When Gong Qianxue is mentioned, Shen Jinglin's expression is like he wants to devour her flesh. Yang, I never thought that when I took you to see Dr. Chen that year, I would actually plant such a seed of disaster for you. Gong Qianxue, she's simply not human. If she's human, how could she be that vicious and perverted? She actually wants to dig out a living fetus, refine it into an elixir and eat it. When he thinks that his younger sister actually suffered such a cruel persecution from this woman that she almost lost her child, Shen Jinglin goes mad with hatred. Yu Yang also frowns and says, Miss, now it seems that Master, Qing Feng, and Dr. Song should have fallen into Gong Qianxue's hands. Moreover, according to my investigation, Gong Qianxue's influence in Jingcheng country is very large. Just the number of heaven stage and above practitioners under her command is innumerable. What should we do? Han Yi's face is calm, sneering. Miss Jun, it would be better for me to directly go over and twist off that woman's head for you and the young master to play with as a ball. It's only now that Han Yi knows that the process of Muyan's pregnancy actually had such a soul-stirring and dangerous experience. When he thinks that the person that they, Jun Shong, hold at the apex of his heart, was actually schemed and murdered like this, Han Yi can't control the surging murderous intent within him. Not to mention that their little master is so adorable. This vicious and perverted woman actually wants to eat their little master. However, Muyan shakes her head. I know that you can't make too many movements in the Yenwu continent, And even more so, you can't use your own strength. Otherwise, the backlash from the rules of heaven and earth will consign you to eternal damnation. But Jun Shong has this subordinate stay here to protect. Don't worry. I just happen to have something that I need you to do. Muyan says a few words in a low voice, a faint smile hanging on the corner of her mouth. On her pale face, this kind of smile seemed bright and holy, but it also made people feel cold for no reason. After instructing Han Yi, she looks at Yang Haotian, Are you Yang, and the others. I know that Gong Qianshua's forces in Jingcheng country are very powerful. Then, do you guys have the guts to follow me to uproot all of Gong Qianshua's forces in Jingcheng country? Yang Haotian and Are you Yang were stunned at first, then their eyes lit up. And the several backbones of the Ink Camp and the Heavenly Secret Unit behind the two of them are so excited that each and every one of their faces are flushed. Miss, do we really have to go against Jingcheng country's most powerful princess? What? You don't dare. No. I just feel that it's too fucking exciting, too exciting. This group of shameless things, they actually dared to sneak attack our brothers in Tianyuan City, and even captured Chief Chang Yu. They dared to provoke our Ink Camp, they're simply tired of living. That's right. If we can turn the entire Jingcheng country upside down, wouldn't our Nether Flame army be famous all over the world? I think it should be infamous, right? Heh, isn't it good to be infamous? This is in line with the nature of our Ink Camp. Let's go kick the soft eggs of those turtle grandsons. That's right, kick the soft eggs of those rolling grandsons. Wherever the Nether Flame army goes, they are invincible and invincible. The Nether Flame army is invincible and invincible. Chapter 583. Are You Yang respectfully kneels down. The Heaven Secret Battalion is willing to listen to Mrs. Orders. Feng Haitang and Old Dao also knelt down. The Everlasting Battalion is willing to listen to Mrs. Orders. After settling in the Netherworld Flame Valley, the Ink Camp and the Tianji Camp were merged into the Netherworld Flame Army, and a special camp was set up to focus on alchemy, doctors, and support. This is the Longevity Camp, headed by Feng Haitang, who is currently studying medicine with Muyan, and assisted by Old Dao and Chen Qingfeng. Bia Chen took a deep breath. She put her right hand on her left chest and slowly knelt down. The Great Void Battalion is at your disposal, Miss. At this moment, the invincible Nether Flame army that would sweep across the three realms in the future and strike fear into the hearts of everyone had formed its first embryonic form. As for the people of the Yanwu, Xiuzhen, and Xiuxian realms, at this very moment, they still don't know what kind of earth-shattering change this frightening army will bring to them. Mu Yang looked at the people kneeling on the ground, and an uncontrollable warmth surged in her heart. Originally, when she established the Ink Camp, she just wanted to use them for revenge. It only took them 5 years. Once Gong Qianshue is eliminated and her great enmity is avenged, she plans to disband the Ink Camp. However, it would appear that she was unable to abandon these people, nor was she willing to part with them. Because unknowingly, these people had already become her relatives, her family. That's right, it's family. Mu Yang takes a deep breath. I'll give you 2 hours. After 2 hours, head to Lotus City. Yes, miss. The crowd retreated like the tide. Shun Jinglin looked at his little sister, who was close at hand. His heart was proud and distressed. He was proud of the soft and cuddly little girl who used to follow him around, but she had already grown up to be like this. The dazzling radiance was so dazzling that no one could conceal it. His heart ached because his sister had to go through so much hardship and suffering to grow up to this point. Muyan turns around and sees Shun Jinglin's distressed expression. Thinking that he's worried, she couldn't help but faintly smile. Rest assured, father and the people of Junji Medical Center will be fine. Dr. Song and the others will also be fine. Because I will not allow anything to happen to them. Shun Jinglin repeatedly nodded and said, Yang Yang, Big Brother believes in you. Big Brother also believes that Gong Qianshue, that vicious beast, will not have a good ending. Hearing this, the arc at the corner of Mu Yang's mouth deepened, but the light in his eyes seemed to have condensed into 10,000-year-old ice. Chen Qing, Gong Qianshue, I originally planned to give them a little more time to struggle at death's door, but they don't seem to appreciate it. Since that's the case, I'll let them know the consequences of touching the people around me. Junmuyan. Jingcheng Country, Lotus City. The usually bustling town was now like a ghost town, and the air was filled with the stench of decay. Indistinctly, there were stifled cries of despair. If someone were to enter this city, they would be shocked to discover something. In this Lotus City, the most luxurious street was the boundary, and it was divided into two parts. In the east, the citizens of Lotus City were hiding from the shivering citizens. Every single one of them was sallow and emaciated, and they looked terrified and despairing. As for the western side, it was completely empty. There were only a few thousand people standing on the huge square. No, perhaps these thousands of people could not be called people, because they did not have the slightest vitality of a living person. His eyes were lifeless, and his skin had already begun to rot. Chapter 584. Those aren't living people, but corpse soldiers, cultivated by GU worms. It's just that compared to Gong Qinshue's corpse soldier team, although there are many of them, they're very weak. Spare me. Doctor, I don't want to become like that. I beg you, let me go. On the street between the east and west, a wretched-looking man is sitting on an armchair. Behind him are dozens of black-clothed men with profound cultivation. This person is Qian Qing's medicine boy and confidant, Qian Ping. Hearing the cries of the common people on the east side, he cracks open his mouth, revealing dark yellow teeth and an eerie smile. These will be Princess Qinshue's most powerful corpse soldiers in the future. How can you say that they're neither human nor ghost? To be able to become the princess's subordinates, to help the princess conquer the world, you should feel honored. Suddenly, Qian Ping's voice pauses, his left cheek twitches, and he darkly says, "Oh, that's right, I almost forgot. What about the group of doctors we brought back from Tianyuan City? It's time to raise more Mother GU." Very soon, several dust-faced, battered and exhausted old men are brought over. Among them, there are quite a few doctors in charge of the Junji Medical Center. The black-clothed men escorting them rudely push them to the ground. Dr. Yu's forehead knocks against the rock, blood immediately flowing. He shakily lifts his head and looks at Qian Ping. "You, who are you people? What do you want to do?" Qian Ping sneers, "What I want to do, you'll soon know." Saying that, he waves his hand. The black-clothed men immediately each take a brocade box and walk over to the doctors. Arriving in front of the doctors, the brocade box is opened, revealing an ugly bug about the size of a fingernail inside. "You, what do you want to do?" Dr. Yu cries out, but is pinched by the chin. The black-clothed men expressionlessly stuff the bug into his mouth. Let me go, tilde. As soon as his chin is released, Dr. Yu desperately wants to vomit out the bug. But the worm seemed to have a mind of its own. As soon as it entered his mouth, once it enters his mouth, it immediately bites through his flesh and burrows inside. Qian Ping watched with satisfaction as all the doctors ate the mother parasite. Then, he smiled and said, "Okay, now, let them start preparing for treatment." His gaze swept across the doctors who were trembling in fear. As they wailed and begged for mercy, his laughter became more and more carefree. "Do you know? The mother GU of the golden silkworm GU could only be fed by the mildest doctor's qi during treatment and refining. But fortunately, we don't lack patients here. Doctors, do your best to treat the patients and raise our mother GU. Ha ha ha." Qian Ping waved his hand. Immediately, a black-clothed man walked to the east side of Lotus City's citizens. His hand rose and the knife fell. In the blink of an eye, nearly 100 civilians were lying in pools of blood. Their limbs were either broken, or their bones were broken. Some even had their stomachs cut open and half of their internal organs dug out. Every single one of them walked up to Dr. Yu and the others, barely breathing. "What are you waiting for?" Qian Ping smiled faintly. "The patient is right in front of you. Don't you plan to treat him?" However, these doctors were only ordinary doctors. Seeing such a scene, they had long since been scared out of their wits. All of their faces were filled with shock, and they couldn't even budge. Chapter 585. As soon as Qian Ping's voice falls, The black-clothed people surrounding the doctors unsheathe their swords one by one, looking terrifying. The doctors are so scared that their souls almost fly away. They scramble over to the patient's side and begin to operate their internal force to treat him. However, as they treat him, a terrible scene happens. The doctors' bellies become bigger and bigger, and their flesh and blood seem to be being devoured, their bodies becoming thinner and thinner. Especially those doctors with low levels, right now they're all skin and bones. Their eyes are completely sunken, and their grizzled hair falls down in clumps. They look like they're already a dried corpse. Suddenly, that person falls down, his body twitching violently. And from inside his body, there's a mumbling sound, as if it's a refusal. Immediately after, his stomach split open, and a black worm crawled out of it. Immediately, the black-clothed people step forward and collect the worm that crawls out. Qian Ping looks at the doctor who's already breathed his last in disgust, and sneers, "Can't even hold on for a quarter of an hour, what's the use of this kind of waste not dying?" After saying that, he kicks the doctor's body, sending him directly into the pile of corpse soldiers on the west side. In a split second, those corpse soldiers swarm over and gnaw the doctor's body clean. The air is deathly silent. Then, slowly, there's a tremble of panic, as well as sadness and despair, filling the air. Whether it's the doctors or the people who have been turned into corpse soldiers, they're just fish under the chopping block, without the slightest chance of survival. Alright, this wave of treatment is over, switch to the next. Qian Ping waves his hand. As a result, the rescued people are fed with GU children, slowly transforming into corpse soldiers. And the other people of Lotus City who haven't been saved once again become rations for the corpse soldiers. No! I won't save them. Finally, a doctor can't stand it anymore and roars hysterically, "Kill me if you have the ability, kill me I'm a doctor of the Junji Medical Center, you're so insane, the Enchantress of Medicine will definitely not let you off." Ha! Junji Medical Center? The Enchantress of Medicine? Qian Ping lets out a loud laugh. "Do you know who my master is? That's Qian Qing, the miracle-working doctor. How dare an insignificant doctor compete with my master and the princess? Let me tell you, I was afraid that your Enchantress wouldn't come. If she dares to come here, I'll make sure she dies without a burial place." At that time, the princess and his master would definitely look at him in a new light. As soon as Qian Ping finished speaking, suddenly, a loud bang sound came from the direction of Lotus Town's gate. Everyone turned to look at the source of the voice. A group of people dressed in elegant sky-blue robes walked in one after another. Every single one of these people had outstanding looks, and their attire was either noble and graceful, or elegant and otherworldly. If one looked closely, they would discover that the two words, "heavenly secrets," were embroidered on the corners of their clothes. Qian Ping couldn't react for a moment. Where did these people come from? How did they break such a heavy iron door? But before he could ask, above the walls of the Lotus Formation, densely packed figures began to appear. These people were all tall men dressed in black. Each and every one of them looked ferocious and didn't conceal the cold killing intent on their bodies in the slightest. Chapter 586. Who are you people? Qian Ping quickly took a step back and hid behind the guard, looking at the two people in bewilderment. As soon as his question falls, he sees that no matter if it's upstairs or downstairs, the people of the Ink Camp and the Tianji unit all scatter to the sides. From the gate tower to the bottom of the city wall, they make a wide path. The melodious sound of the zither floats in the air. Soon after, several silhouettes seem to descend from the sky, slowly descending from the passage that the Ink Camp had left behind. The leader was a young girl dressed in white. Her skin was as white as snow, emitting a sparkling radiance under the sunlight. Her eyes were sparkling and the corners of her eyes were slightly raised. It was as if she was infinitely charming and calm. Qian Ping swallowed his saliva and stared blankly. He had never seen such a beautiful girl before. Just by looking at it from afar, it was as if his soul had been hooked away. No matter who this person was, if he could get his hands on him and have some fun, he would be more carefree than an immortal. However, as the girl got closer and closer, Qian Ping's expression began to become bewildered. Why did the girl in front of him look so familiar? Only when she was only 30 feet away from Chen Qing did the young girl leisurely stop. Her red lips curled up slightly, and a faint smile appeared on her beautiful face. I heard that you're looking for me. The bewilderment in Chen Ping's heart grew heavier and heavier. His gaze fell unblinkingly on her face. You, who exactly are you? Madam Enchantress, you've finally come to save us. Suddenly coming back to his senses, Dr. Yu and the others throw themselves in front of Muyan with snot and tears all over their faces. There's fear and shame on their faces. Chen Ping suddenly widens his eyes. You're the Enchantress of Medicine, Jun Muyan? Yu Yang, who is standing behind Mu Yang, pulls out an armchair and places it behind Mu Yang like a magic trick. Muyan smiles faintly and sits down. Her hands gently pluck the strings of the Tian Mo Qin, the corners of her mouth slightly raised as she looks at Chen Ping. Behind her, Yang Haotian, Feng Haitang, Yu Yang, and Bai Chen were like 4 guardian gods, firmly guarding her from behind. Yeah, I'm Jun Muyan. There was a smile on her face, and her face was as beautiful as a flower. Didn't you say that as long as I dared to come, you would consign me to eternal damnation? Chen Ping's body trembled slightly, his eyes widened, but he did not answer the question. Jun Mu Yang, you really are Jun Mu Yang, the woman who was pregnant with the immortal fetus back then, TSK. Mu Yang frowned slightly, and the smile on her face disappeared. How boring, how could I casually bump into an old acquaintance? Since you're able to recognize me, it means that you were also involved in what happened back then. Chen Ping looked into her bone-chilling eyes and shuddered. He opened his mouth to say something. Mu Yang has already waved her hand, coldly saying, kill without mercy. As soon as his voice falls, the people of the Heavenly Secret Unit and the Ink Camp move. In just a moment, the heads of the men in black rolled on the ground. Chen Ping, whose hands and feet have been removed, crawls at Muyan's feet, letting out sorrowful cries and pleas. Mu Yang said indifferently, where's Chen Qing? Master. Master is in the underground palace in the center of the city, cultivating the golden silkworm Jiu. Spare me, boo-hoo. I don't want to die. Mu Yang plucked the strings of the zither in her hands, and Chen Ping's head is immediately removed. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.